My name is Greg Getter, and I've been using a phone service called googlefi for the last 4 years. It's a really unique offering from Google that is especially geared toward people who travel internationally a lot. But since 2020 has restricted travel for most of us, I wanted to bring up the question of whether it still makes sense to use googlefi in 2020. Now, before we get into that, in general, there are people that googlefi would really work for, and there are other people that would not benefit from using this plan. So the people googlefi works really well for are people who travel frequently or who intend to travel international frequently, even if you can't. And the other thing is people who use data lightly. So either people who use very little data or people who don't use more than about 15 to 20 gigabytes per month if they're to select the unlimited plan. Now, who is googlefi not for? The first is people who use a lot of data. So if you're using 30, 50, 100 gigabytes of data every month, well, googlefi is going to cap your data speeds once you get up into those high numbers. So there are other unlimited plans that are probably better for you, but those unlimited plans typically don't let you roam internationally. So there's a trade-off there. The second is iPhone and non-supported phone users, because even though iPhones and a lot of other phones are partially supported by Fi at this point, there are certain limitations and the experience is slightly degraded in my experience. I do hope this gets better in the future. And the third type of person that googlefi is not really for is someone who lives in a rural location. At least in my experience, the service outside some of the major cities is really degraded the farther out you go. And even though googlefi technically works on 3 of the nation's most popular networks, it's still not enough. Something like Verizon may actually be better, but you'll have to look at the coverage maps in your specific location. But if you do fit the ideal profile for a Fi customer, there are several things that I think are really beneficial and unique that set it apart from a lot of other phone plans. And the first one is its flexibility when it comes to payment based on how you use the plan month to month. So the way I use googlefi is that mostly I'm at home and I'm downloading very little. So any large files that I would download, like an audiobook or maybe an offline YouTube video, I would actually download that at home while I'm on Wi-Fi, and then I would play it on the go. And especially right now when we're home most of the time, I'm using very little data when I'm out. And googlefi is great for that because it's quite cheap when you're not using a lot of data. And on the flip side, when you do need to use unlimited data, googlefi makes it really easy to do that. Either you just use more than 6 gigabytes of data and it automatically stops charging you, or you can manually select the unlimited plan for that month. So it allows you to pay very little when you don't need a lot of data. And then when you do need data, you can pay a pretty competitive price. So I think it's pretty fair that it offers this if you fit the buyer persona for googlefi. Now, a third element of flexibility that's really unique about googlefi is the ability to pause service for up to 3 months. And one of the main use cases I can think of for this is when you go abroad and you're there for a week or a month or a few months, and you find a local SIM card that's much cheaper than the googlefi data rate that you're paying. The caveat here is that if you do pause the service, you can't do it for more than 3 months without turning it on and then turning it back off again, and you won't be able to receive any calls or texts during that time. However, there is a workaround for that, and I'm going to talk about that in my next googlefi advanced tricks video. Another thing that I love about googlefi is the ability to use multiple SIM cards. So a lot of other carriers, if you want to add an LTE iPad or another device that has cellular connectivity in it, you actually have to pay an extra $10 a month or something like that to get that device on the plan. Well, with googlefi, you can request SIM cards from them, and all you have to do is pay for the extra data that you're using on that SIM card. No extra per device fee per month. So here with my iPad, this is actually an LTE iPad, and I can take this out on the go with me. And I have basically a mini computer that is automatically connected to the cell phone network at all times. And finally, one thing that I like about googlefi is its support for eSIMs on more and more devices. What this means is that instead of sticking a physical SIM card in the device, well, all you have to do is activate it with a carrier, and you don't have to wait for a SIM card to come in the mail. My Google Pixel 3 has the SIM card slot empty, so if I ever were to travel to another place, I could stick another SIM card in there without worrying about losing the googlefi SIM card. And for new users, googlefi is even supporting eSIMs on iPhones now, even though I would still say the iPhone experience on googlefi is not quite perfect just yet. What I like about eSIM support, even if you can't necessarily use it yourself, is that Google is continuing to invest in the platform, unlike some other services like Google Hangouts where they've basically abandoned it, but you still need to use it for certain functionality. With all that being said, googlefi is still far from perfect. The customer support leaves a lot to be desired, and you're definitely not going to get the Apple Store-like experience where you can go to the store the same day if you need to try to get something fixed. You have to deal with third-party authorized repair centers or sending it in and waiting multiple days to get your item back. And googlefi still needs to support Apple products better, where they can switch easily between all the networks that googlefi uses, where you can put your Apple Watch with LTE on googlefi. These are things that are still missing from googlefi, so it's definitely not for everyone. If you haven't signed up for googlefi yet, I have a referral link in the description below that will give you a $20 account credit after you've used the service for 30 days. When you use this link, only you get the $20 credit after 30 days. I don't get anything. The reason being that I've shared my link with so many people that I'm no longer eligible to get credits. However, I would love it if existing Fi users would post their referral links in the comments below. That way, when somebody new signs up for service, after 30 days, both of you will get a $20 credit. So what do you think about googlefi? Is it worth it even though we can't travel right now? I'd love to hear what you think in the comments below. Thanks so much, and I hope you have a great day.